So it's my great pleasure and fun to introduce Abby Smith for this next section. She is the Deputy Executive Director at the FAA's Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration Office. So you can guess the topics of our next conversations. She's been working at the FAA for quite some years. She's been coordinating the integration of advanced air mobility AAM operations into the aviation system. And there at the FAA, she directly supports the executive director in leading the FAA's effort to safely integrate drones and AAM operations into the national airspace system. She also, in the past, served as the executive director of policy and plans within the Office of Policy and International Affairs and Environment, overseeing some strategic planning and policy development for the FAA. And in that position, she worked on aviation policies, plans, and goals for the FAA. She began her career at the FAA in 1991 as an air traffic controller in the Miami Air Route Traffic Control Center. Hopefully we'll hear a little bit about this as well today. And worked in a variety of different capabilities, including as an accident investigator, and she worked on the case of American 587. She holds degrees from the Indiana University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and a Master of Science degree in dispute resolution from Nova Southeastern. So we're going to start with a little address, and that will be directly followed by a conversation in a slightly less formal way as earlier today and like you saw yesterday. And with this, if you want to help me welcome Amy.
Thanks, Alex. Good afternoon. Really? Good afternoon. That's more like it. All right, thanks so much for having me here today, and also a special thank you to Alex for the kind introduction, and super big thank you to the University of California, Berkeley, and Caltrans for, isn't this an amazing event? This is fantastic. I'm so excited to be here at the Future of Aviation conference, and I'd love to tell you a little bit more about why. So first, in some ways, we at the FAA have been building towards advanced air mobility for many years. When you think about it, it wasn't so long ago, after all, that all-powered aviation was future aviation. And it was just over 20 years after the first viable airplane was built by the Wright brothers that the US government took its first steps towards implementing the safe national airspace system by establishing the predecessor to the FAA called the Aeronautics Branch in the Department of Commerce. These decades later, we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish where safety is concerned, because it's truly our North Star. I've offered this brief glimpse back in history to remind all of us, you know, we've done this before. And together with you, I'm confident we can do it again. After all, if we can imagine it, we can do it. So I'm excited to be here first and foremost because I believe our agency has something really valuable to contribute to the future of advanced air mobility, a proven record of experience and safety. My confidence in all of this doesn't just come from the agency's decades-long efforts to scale up safe traditional aircraft operations, however. It's also the case that we've been looking very specifically into what it will take to make AAM a reality for quite a while now, and we have a lot of work going on for AAM and our other big new entrants, drones. For example, we're continuing the process to implement the remote identification regulation for drones, and as a breaking news, just finalized the means of compliance for remote ID yesterday. So that's a huge benchmark that was done collaboratively with standards communities and many of you alike. So thank you if you had any involvement in that. We're also working to enable beyond visual line of sight, or because we love our acronyms, BVLOS, drone operations by rule instead of by what we've been doing up to this point, one-off waivers and exemptions. And we're making progress in the area of aircraft certification for both drones and AAM. Like you, we're eager to see the work we've done bring about a new day in aviation, and with it, countless social benefits. So I'm excited to be here to get to know you and your ideas and concerns better so we can all work together towards that end. Even though advanced air mobility is not exactly new, I'm nevertheless also enthused because this conference feels a bit to me like the start of a fresh new day. On a personal level, while I've had a long history in aviation, I've only recently joined the FAA's Unmanned Aircraft System Integration Office, which is the hub of our drone and AAM activity. Since then, much of my work has been focused on advanced air mobility. And while it's sometimes been like either drinking from a fire hose or getting sprayed by it, I've never been so much happier to do so. And now being here with all of you, the people who are making this happen, well, it feels exactly like the thing that I want to be doing and that I'm delighted and honored to be here with you to do. But there's more to it than the fact that I'm somewhat new in this arena. To me, this conference is a sign of a new and super smart approach to advancing aviation. As a leader, one of my biggest annoyances is how often we silo information. At the FAA, sometimes I refer to them as bunkers of excellence instead of just silos. And we've seen that happen in the world of drone integration as well. We've worked with industry, we've worked with recreational flyers, we've worked with other nations, we've worked with state, local, tribal, territorial, and public safety organizations too. We're working more and more with academia all the time. But we simply haven't gotten all together in the same room at the same time with the same information as much as we've needed to do so. You folks are really doing it though. For me, this is the biggest reason why I'm excited to be here. Now, as exhilarated as I'm feeling at the moment, I nonetheless take seriously the FAA's role as a regulator. Our agency has the responsibility to facilitate advanced air mobility integration safely and efficiently in the United States and to help with global harmonization along the way as often as we can. And to be successful, we need you to know what's going on, and we need to hear your voice. So in the spirit of working together and breaking down information silos, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our progress. So let's start with our integrated approach to new entrants. Perhaps you've heard before that the FAA is taking a crawl, walk, fly approach to integrating new entrants into the NAS. When it comes to AAM, our research strategy begins by focusing on how that enables initial, less risky operations. This, of course, is the crawl phase, where operations are more familiar and less like what we expect to see in the end state when we realize the full potential. Next, the walk phase will focus on research to support increased advanced air mobility operations and increased levels of automation. And finally, the fly phase will include advanced operations, highly automated air traffic management, remote piloted and autonomous aircraft, and increased operational frequency. In all of this, our research planning efforts include analysis of FAA's decisions needed to enable operational capabilities for AAM and identification of research needed to inform those decisions. We continue to develop and apply this research identification framework to uncover gaps, to keep research relevant, and to map those results back to the operation capabilities they support. Of course, we need to be certain that these processes align with any future rulemaking that may be required. The end goal is to apply what we learned from these waivered and exempted operations to determine how we create smart, consistent regulations for expanded operations. We've already been doing this with regard to drones, and we see progress working well. So let's talk about powered lift for a minute. In addition to telling you about the FAA's anticipated plans for phasing in new aircraft and more advanced operations, I do want to offer you a few updates. For those of you who've been wondering about the agency's evolution on powered lift certification, the FAA is modifying its regulatory approach to both the certification of powered lift aircraft and the pilots who operate them. The change is part of the agency's efforts to safely and efficiently integrate new types of aircraft into the nation's aerospace system while providing a simpler pathway for applicants to obtain the necessary FAA approvals. The previous approach of certifying these aircrafts as airplanes would have required them to be operated under airplane rules rather than under a framework that can be tailored to take advantage of these new technologies that can transform aviation. That approach was focused primarily on certifying the aircraft. This new approach instead fosters the development of a stable framework for operating the aircraft. I'm happy to report that none of the work that industry applicants have done so far has been wasted. I want to assure you that there will be no disruptions to existing applicants' timelines. We will have an operational framework in place before the first type certificate is issued. The agency will type certificate powered lift under its special class process in 14 CFR 21.17b, you know I had to do that, right, of the regulations using portions of the performance-based airworthiness standards contained in Part 23 of the regulations for small airplanes. This special class process is designed to address the many novel features of unique aircraft, such as these emerging powered lift designs. This regulatory framework already exists, and this approach is consistent with international standards. The agency plans to continue to develop its powered lift regulations to safely enable innovation with regard to powered lift operations and pilot training as we gain more experience in this area. What about vertiports? I'm pleased to tell you that our Office of Airports released its draft engineering brief 105 for vertiport design earlier this year. The draft was open for public comment for 45 days and closed on April 18th. In late March, we also held a well-attended virtual Industry Day public meeting. The agency has completed the adjudication of all the submitted comments and is preparing the final engineering brief for publication, which we anticipate happening soon in late summer. This is an early effort at interim design guidance for vertiports and was based on limited performance and design data for the types of aircraft that will ultimately use these facilities. We expect this guidance to evolve as we learn more about AAM aircraft performance capabilities and the ground infrastructure required to support their operations. The Office of Airports plans to publish a new advisory circular by 2025, which will contain performance-based standards for vertiports once we get more information. Well, let's talk about the concept of operations. In June of 2020, the FAA's Office of NextGen published version 1 of our Advanced Air Mobility Concept of Operations, or CONOPS, which was called Urban Air Mobility CONOPS. NextGen continues to lead this work and is currently writing the second version, which looks at the long-term version for advanced air mobility. This CONOPS will be broader than the original, especially in that it will incorporate a variety of advanced air mobility use cases rather than just considering urban air mobility operations. Early this past spring, NextGen and NASA organized a workshop with AAM stakeholders to solicit feedback on the new CONOPS. Some of you may have participated, and for those of you that did, we're really grateful. The NextGen team is aiming to publish the final version 2.0 document by early 2023, and we look forward to sharing more information with you as we get closer. Some of you are probably aware that we've broadened our Federal Advisory Committee to assist the agency in advanced air mobility concerns last fall. What we had previously called the Drone Advisory Committee, or DAC, is now the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, or AAAC, because AC. The name change, along with changes in scope, charter, and membership numbers, reflects a logical progression to position the FAA to work concurrently with both the drone and AAM industries and other stakeholders on issues, technology, and policies. From our office up to the FAA administrator, we want you to know that we are all in when it comes to these technologies, and the AAAC is just one way we're translating our words into action. And of course, we're all in when it comes to collaborating with the AAAC. They, including, is Bob Kroc still back there at the heckler table? Is one of those committee members that helps us out. And they've been excellent partners all along the way. The committee currently has a task group looking at the agency's strategic framework for AAM near-term operations, which will serve as a guide for incorporating near-term AAM operations into the NAS. We look forward to receiving the group's recommendations as we work to finalize the framework. Bob may actually have some ideas in mind on how any of you can help in that effort, and you might want to talk to him later. There are other ways we collaborate as well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the importance of our collaboration with NASA, whose partnership and expertise we greatly appreciate and adore. The AAM integration team at the FAA works closely with our colleagues there, including the AAM Executive Board, which consists of leadership from both agencies. Within the structure of the Executive Board, we collaborate on a number of areas, including airspace design, aircraft systems, automation, ConOps, national campaign efforts, and community integration topics. All of these areas are critical to our ability to achieve the scale of operations that AAM stakeholders envision in the future. What's happening on the Hill? I hope it's clear at this point that the FAA is eager as anyone to see AAM move forward, but you and I are not the only ones. As you're likely aware, a version of the Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act was passed recently by both the House and Senate earlier this year. This bill is now being reconciled within Congress in preparation for transmission to President Biden for signature. This bill will likely become the first law enacted by Congress on advanced air mobility, and it's every bit as significant as the first laws enacted a decade ago that opened up the future of drones in the United States. This new legislation would direct the Office of the Secretary of Transportation to establish an interagency working group specifically on advanced air mobility, and also provide an established federal definition of advanced air mobility, which I think we greatly need. Both the working group and the definition will help all of us as we continue to integrate advanced air mobility operations into the NAS. This will galvanize a whole of government approach to AAM because it does take all of us. To that end, the FAA is monitoring the legislation progress, and if enacted, we'll begin working closely with our Department of Transportation colleagues to get this new group established as quickly as possible. Now, some breaking news happened yesterday. Yesterday, we had the first of its kind White House event in support of this nascent industry that was hosted by OSTP and the National Security Council. It was an in-person and live streamed, and I believe recorded, so many of you can, since we were here doing cool things, we can see that later on. It included government, industry, and academia, very senior Biden administration leaders from a cross-section of executive branches. The emphasis was on supporting innovation, the innovation behind drones and AAM, the environmental benefits that this nascent industry brings to the globe, more inclusion in aviation than ever before as a result of this nascent industry, the importance of community engagement, the need to support infrastructure, the economic benefits to rural areas and good-paying jobs, the need for global leadership in the complete supply chain for this industry to support UAS and AAM, and the need to advance counter-UAS. A lot of these topics sound mighty similar to what we've been talking about here, and so it's very encouraging that not only at the state and local level, like's going on here, this is happening as a national conversation in earnest. My final update is kind of completely shameless plug for an upcoming FAA event. I promise it's one you won't want to miss. I was hoping that I was going to be able to announce the date and the venue, but I just got a phone call this morning that says we need to hold off just a minute. But we have the FAA, in cooperation with the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International, or AUVSI, has co-hosted for years the annual FAA Drone Symposium. I hope some of you have been, and I hope some of you will come again. The last one took place in Orlando this year. Well, we're working, and I was going to say that I'm extremely happy to announce, but I'm extremely happy to almost announce that we're partnering again with AUVSI, and we're going to co-host our first ever FAA Advanced Air Mobility Summit later this year. So stay tuned. The whole purpose is to create an event focused on this emerging sector of AAM and to chart a path for integrating these technologies into our existing aviation system. And we plan to bring together innovators that includes the regulatory and operational sides, NASA, academia, international authorities, planners, states, local governments, tribal and territorial. When we finalize the contract and can review, I promise I will work with all the organizers so you all are well aware in advance and can make plans to join us. I think I've said a lot already. I am a chatterbox, if you know me. And while I had planned to talk a bit about the importance of safety and collaboration, the anticipated environmental benefits of AAM, and the democratization of the national airspace system we foresee as integration to become a reality, I realize I'm in a room full of people who've considered all of this before. Many of you have been contemplating, working around, and maybe even itching for this moment, possibly for a very long time. You've already stretched the limits of your imagination to envision the aircraft that will revolutionize our lives. You've calculated and crunched the numbers to plan how your community can best incorporate this new technology. You've researched, written about, and advocated for AAM because of its potential to revolutionize our airspace and deliver environmental and societal benefits to the many, not just the few. So I'd like to think there's probably very little I can say that will make your desire to achieve integration any greater than it already is. Still, I think it's worth circling back for just a minute to where I began. Those of you who are listening carefully to the brief nugget in history offered when I started might be wondering why the FAA's predecessor organization was initially established as part of the Department of Commerce. It's a reasonable question. As I've said, our mission is safety. We're agnostic on the technology and the marketplace. We just want it all done without causing harm to people or property, whether in the sky or on the ground. Why then the Department of Commerce? Because of this. Even one of the most exciting moments in our nation's history, when innovators couldn't wait to see where the airplane could take them financially and otherwise, it was those same innovators, people like you, who knew the airplane could not reach its full commercial and social potential without federal action to improve and maintain safety standards. So they insisted on a federal response. In other words, even before there was federal regulation, there were people who knew the full promise of flight couldn't be realized without consistent safety rules. You thought it was most important to work with us before there was even an us. And you thought safety came before anything else. Through all the buzz and hum and anticipation I feel in this room today, I believe the same thinking persists. So we know you take safety seriously, and we want you to know that as regulators, we don't exist to be the distant, unapproachable stumbling block on your path to AAM integration. No, we are here like you because we want to make integration a reality for all of us in the best ways possible. I want to thank you for your role in all of this, your passion, your energy, and even at times your stubbornness. Because in this goal, this is a goal worth being passionate and energetic and stubborn about. For our part, we at the FAA pledge to do everything we can to meet your wholehearted determination with our own and make this new world a reality as safely and quickly as we can. Thank you. Hey, Alex, let's chat, man.
First, thank you so much for the very inspirational
Fist bump.
fist bump. All right, to start this on a good note. This morning when we were discussing, I think it took us about 30 seconds to narrow down this intentional inclusiveness that we feel here in this room from all the stakeholders. And so to completely switch the topic and starting on a very personal note,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the question that probably everybody asks anybody who has been in aviation is, did you always know you would want to be in aviation?
Well, that's a great question. And so when I was 5, I had a dream. I wanted to be either a singer or a clown. And so I kind of think that my getting into aviation was kind of almost like a Forrest Gump experience. I had finished my undergraduate in psychology and African American studies from Indiana University, and this was, gosh, it was 1989. So there, at least maybe in California, there was an internet search for jobs, but not where I was. And so I pulled out the classifieds and started at the beginning in alphabetical order, and there was accountant, and I was like, nah. And it said administrative assistant. I thought I'd probably kill somebody if I did that. And then it said air traffic controller. Be an air traffic controller, come take the test. And then it showed the salary at that time, and it was like, boing. And so by kind of like, I tripped into this career. But once I tripped into it, I was hooked. And so, you know, since 23, I've been deeply involved in aviation for the last 31 and a half years.
And following that first experience and looking at your bio, the immediate question that comes to mind is workforce diversity. I mean, judging from the dates you mentioned, and for those of you who have watched the historical records, for example, Pushing Tin or other movies of that nature, what was your experience early on in your career?
I did see that movie, and frankly, Alex,
maybe we should recommend it.
Yeah, I was sick with bronchitis for a week, and I had the energy to walk 2 blocks to Block. Do you remember Blockbuster? Yeah, it's funny. So I walked to Blockbuster and rented a videotape. Do you remember videotapes? Yeah, so, and I watched Pushing Tin, and I was like, oh my God, this is depressing, because I felt like I was back in the control room. But so, yeah, when I started in 1991, there were about 17% women. And what I'm kind of sad about is there's about 17% women in air traffic control in 2022.
How do we fix it? How do we explain it? And tell us more about that culture. And in general, I think this is relevant for this too, because we're going to build a lot of new professions on the ground, in the cockpits, and so on. I'm curious.
Yeah, and in fact, in commercial aviation, it's about 7% women in the cockpits. I should say flight decks. That's a much more inclusive term. So we have a diversity problem in this space. And one of the things that I'm so excited to be in this space in UAS integration right now is because not only can we democratize the skies and make them accessible for so many more people in so many different ways than we could have before, but we have the ability, all of us in this room and all of us that care about the space, to make this accessible for everybody, women, minorities, because I feel like if we keep it in the same space and with the same demographics that we have historically, we potentially have a safety issue because we haven't included the diversity of thought that we need to. So I think all of us have a huge responsibility to find people and bring them along with us.
And I think that's precisely one of the topics that unites our two professions. You represent the government, the regulation authority, and also by jurisdiction, all the people in that system. We are a public university, we train people. So that brings me to the next topic I wanted to cover, which is the current shortage of pilots. And I'm curious also your thoughts on this. I don't want to say this is a new problem. There have been ups and downs. We are the beginning of the pipeline. Maybe by the time we get the kids, it's maybe even too late. But what do you think is the problem? How do we fix it? And that'll prompt probably a few more questions on what are next pilots. But first, how do you think about these problems?
Well, I mean, I think so. You know, we hear about the pilot shortage in the media like every day, right? And if you've had a flight canceled because there wasn't a pilot, you hear about that too. And there's so many other jobs in aviation and in drones. In fact, so the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, which is the one that Jay and I work with the closest, we tasked them with looking at what to do for this kind of pipeline crisis that we have, to start young, because I know you're an academic and are a wonderful asset to the University of California, Berkeley, but it's too late when they get to college to hook people into this industry. We need to start at kindergarten. I mean, and we need to, and fourth grade and 12th grade are two of the most pivotal moments in a human being's career, or thinking about what they want to do in their career, and we need to get them where they are. And so the AAAC gave us this wonderful set of recommendations, and they also shared some statistics that I want to share with you today. That's this. From the graduating class of 22, we needed 1.5% of the high school graduates in aviation this year. It's like 55,800 students are needed in this field right now. In 23, that number grows to 2.3% of that graduating class. That's 85,000 people. That's, now let's add drones. Let's add advanced air mobility. We all need to be recruiters. If you are an OEM, or if you are an industry partner or an advocate, we all need to be working together to educate and excite the creativity and possibilities of children, not just to be pilots. Mechanics are good paying jobs. Dispatchers are good paying jobs. With drones, there's all kinds of interesting things that you can do. Data scientists, cybersecurity scientists, we need all of those people. And so we need to bring sexy back.
I totally hear that. This is really music to my ears, in the sense that at Berkeley, we don't have an aerospace department, which in the current context is probably an asset. We're creating aerospace programs. We created 3 in the last 2 years. For the first year in 2022, we're going to host a cohort of 40 students. They will be our first undergraduate major in aerospace. And you mentioned data science, which is another thing. People don't think about degrees in data science. So to us, what we are very excited when we look at and when we hear what you just said, is that the future professions of aerospace are very different than the ones. Yes. In my own academic department at the other school on the other side of the bay, we usually don't speak the name of that school on our campus. It starts with an S. We have a very traditional department, and I think what we're trying to do is to build something different. And I would be curious from your perspective, what do you see the future of pilots be? Like you said, a drone pilot is different than someone on the flight deck, to use the proper terminology. Tell us your perception on this.
Well, yeah, the thing that I think is so cool about this is we have this opportunity to include people in the airspace of the United States in such a different way, at such a lower point of entry. So to be a drone pilot, you need to, or to be a commercial drone pilot, you need to pass our regulatory Part 107 to get your licensure. That takes about $300. That's completely different than being a pilot and even getting your private pilot's license, which for so many people, and the secretary this morning talked about that ALICE group. And I wrote that down because, I don't know about the rest of you, but that kind of tugged at my heartstrings. And so we have this opportunity to lift people out of poverty for a very low number. And I know I was talking with Basil yesterday at lunch about a program that they're doing, and I forget, North Carolina. I forget the Elizabeth something community college in North Carolina, and they have a program there to get people through community college for $500 a semester. Well, that's amazing. And they're getting them Part 107 licenses, and they're working with companies to get these people jobs, right, or at least interviews right out of the gate. Well, given the workforce numbers that I shared with you a few minutes ago, we all need to start thinking really differently about workforce and about for technical schools, for community colleges, for four-year universities to not just worry about, do we need to get people all the way through our program and give them a degree, but what can we do to enhance communities intellectually and to create really meaningful jobs for people, and maybe tease them along to say, you know what, I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to do this. I might go get my pilot's license. But to give them a point of entry and a different perspective on what they can imagine themselves doing. And that makes me really excited.
And actually, the FAA has done a ton of additional work to support that, getting kids through college. You have all these opportunities for internships, fellowships, and these other programs. And maybe if you could tell us a little bit about this, because the recruitment is one part, but then there's the pipelining, and I think you've played a huge role in that.
I'm not sure I played a huge role.
Well, no, your organization, you too.
Well, there's a couple things. Well, we every year we partner with minority serving institutions. We call them MSI interns, and so we go to places that historically have women, have a real large number of women, have a large number of African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic, etc., Asian. And we recruit. And so this year, I think every year we do between 150 and 200 interns. We just expanded our program. It used to just be for the summer, and now it's 11 months that can be extended an additional 13. So these are paid internships that these young people who are either in undergraduate or graduate school can do while they're finishing their degree. A lot of times they come and stay with us, but even if they go and work in another part of this industry, they get a glimpse of how the sausage is made and what are some of the areas that we deal with, which is really cool. We also just started, based on the 2018 reauthorization language, now I guess this was an appropriation. We did something called the Air Grant Certification Program. This Air Grant, Fellowship. The Air Grant Fellowship is really cool. We take people that are either in their master's, doctorate, or postdoctoral stages of study. We bring them on as a temporary 2-year employee. They spend a year on the Hill in one of the 2 big committees on the House or Senate, and then they spend a year with us in our policy shop. They have the opportunity, of course, that I'm sure they're going to be recruited by everybody within FAA and within the aviation industry, but regardless, we think intellectually this, for making policy about how we do good government and how we work together collaboratively, this is going to position us really well. This was based on something that was done by NOAA and has been wildly successful, called the Marine Grant Fellowship. We're starting small, but the Marine Grant, I think theirs is like 150 interns a year. So we're a long way from that scale. We're going to crawl, walk, fly, but that is a vision for the future. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. That's really, really good. Well, we are almost out of time, and this is an inaugural event that I think we've heard so much positive feedback already that I think we're already thinking about the next editions, and you'll hear about this very soon. But from where you stand, and maybe as parting comments for this session, what would you tell or advise this community? It seems already in a day and a half we have achieved a ton, and there's more to come, but what would be your parting words, and what would you recommend to us, our community?
Well, I would say, well, number one, thank you everybody for being here and for leaning in. We are in this incredible renaissance. There's been nothing like this since the Wright brothers first took to the air. So I feel like there was the renaissance of literature in Europe, many centuries ago. I think we're in a true renaissance of aviation. And I think the important thing that all of us need to do is to be very intentionally together. It's not about any one of us. No one person has the keys. No one person has the smarts. It's all of us being radically candid, radically inclusive with each other so that we work together, state, federal, local, tribal, territorial, municipal, academia, manufacturing, other advocacy groups. It takes our whole system Oh, and should I say, venture capitalists, please bring us the money, right? It takes all of us working together in these kinds of forums and keeping these conversations going when we leave, I think is going to be critical as we move forward in the future together to create something so fabulous for our future. And that's my advice.
Abby, thank you so much. It's
Thank
been a lot
you.
of fun, and thank you for being here today with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.